Hello, and welcome to the 100th episode and Season 2 finale of The Secret Sits. Today, we're going to do things a little bit different. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to The Secret Sits. I'm your host, John Dodson. Join us every Thursday as we uncover the secrets behind the world's most fascinating true crime cases. You can find all episodes of The Secret Sits for free on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you are hearing, reach out to us on Instagram and Facebook at The Secret Sits Podcast, or on Twitter at Secret Sits Pod. Now, on with our story. Welcome back to The Secret Sits. As I said in the intro, this is our 100th episode. I can't even believe it. This is also the Season 2 finale of The Secret Sits. Today, we're going to do something we have never done before, and we're just going to talk. I'm going to go through cases that we have covered in the first 2 seasons of The Secret Sits that have meaningful updates that I would like to share with you. But before we get into all of that, I have a very special guest today. It's someone that you've heard about here on The Secret Sits over and over since episode 1. He's our amazing audio engineer and my husband, Gabriel Dodson.
Hi, everybody. Wow, this is strange. I'm on the other end. This is something very different for me.
So, Gabriel is by profession a professional vocalist, and he is a performer, but he also does a lot of editing for his YouTube channel, which is called what?
Gabriel Presents.
Gabriel Presents. Actually, you should go there and subscribe. So, today, what we're going to do is Gabriel's going to give you a little introduction to himself, and we're going to talk about the podcast for just a small little bit, and then we're going to get into our case reviews from the past 2 seasons.
Oh, wow. We're talking about me. Okay. So obviously, I edit this podcast. I'm pretty much what I do is I wait for him to create the story and give me inspiration on how to deliver it to you. And then I make sure that it sounds as good as I can make it, and I add some fun music to it. So that's my job with Secret Sits. For me, I'm a professional vocalist. I've been working as a singer for many, many years. I've worked at Tokyo Disneyland. That has been one of my favorite places to work. And I currently am a singer over at Universal. I'm a ragtime gals over at the Jimmy Fallon Show over at Universal Studios Orlando. So that's kind of a little snippet of who I am. Actually, I have a couple questions for you. So one of the things that people talk to me about a lot when we talk about the podcast, because I work with a lot of entertainers. So that's the first thing that I talk about when I get to work and we mention what we've been doing. But they always talk about the poem and how that's influenced the podcast. And for those of you that have not heard it, I get to say it this time. I'm so excited. The poem is, "We dance round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows." Can you talk a little bit about why that specific poem sticks out to you?
So this poem is actually titled The Secret Sits, and it's by Robert Frost. It was kind of my get out of jail free card poem when I was in high school. In all your literature classes, when you had to memorize a poem, this was the one I pulled out of my back pocket that was 1 sentence long. But it really applies to our world of true crime in what its meaning truly is. We dance round in a ring and suppose. All of us on the outside are looking at a case and guessing. But the secret sits in the middle and knows. The truth is there. The truth in a true crime case is always there. However, can we get there? That is what the poem means to me.
People that don't know, you do all of the research for the podcast yourself. A lot of times I'm listening to the story for the first time when we're recording. I follow along with the script just to make sure that we're staying on track. But what's your process when you're putting the story together?
First, I identify with a story in some way. A story has to be interesting to me personally for me to research and write it. So, finding stories within news articles or researching random topics or listening to other true crime podcasts and hearing a story. But then when I hear that story, sometimes I'm like, there has to be a little bit more to that story. There has to be a little more minutia and detail, a little bit more that I can bring when I tell the story than maybe another podcast had done, or maybe another article that I read. But then sometimes when I go and I do that, I can't. Sometimes the podcast I listened to covered every aspect of the story that I could find myself. So I move on and I have to find a different story that I'm interested in. So, as that goes along, I pile up stories that I find very interesting. And then I add research to those slowly, one story at a time, until I finally get to the point where I'm writing that particular story. At that point, I pile all my research together. I write a full script. I like to tell a story in a chronological way where it makes sense, the beginning, the middle, and then the end. That is, unless a story has been told over and over again, and I really want to tell it in a different way. So, for instance, this season we covered the J.C. Dugard case. Now, I believe everyone has heard of the J.C. Dugard case. Everyone has heard all of the sordid details and everything else, but they've seen it and heard it from an outside perspective. So, when I told her case, I wanted to tell it from her point of view. I wanted you to experience what she saw in a different way than you normally have. So I used her memoirs and I wrote the script for our podcast so that it was as intimately her story as possible. And then after we completed her story, we did a fourth episode to wrap everything up and give you all of the detail that JC had no idea happened while she was in captivity. Sometimes it takes a different perspective.
I really love how you work on creating an actual story, how you said beginning, middle, and end. It's very cinematic. So it helps me be able to create that other layer of the show when it comes to the music. And that's my favorite part, just because the music itself, even there's many times that I'll be listening to the story and I will be crying just because of when I add the music, it really it puts it all into that little perspective of what's really going on. So I've got one more question for you. What are you looking forward to working on the next season? It's coming up. This is the end of season 2. We've got hopefully many, many seasons to go. So what's next for next season or even future seasons?
Coming up on season 3 of The Secret Sits, we have some very interesting stories. We have some true crime heavy hitters and some lesser known true crime stories, which are very cinematic, nevertheless.
And I'm definitely looking forward to that. And that's saying a lot since I know that you have mentioned once or twice that I am not the biggest true crime fanatic. I'm doing this because you are my husband, but I do enjoy the stories. So it is definitely something that puts me through a journey. And I do appreciate that a lot. So I'm looking forward to the next season. So having said that, let's get to the actual updates. That's all you.
All right, so we're going to do a few updates for cases we covered in the first 2 seasons of The Secret Sits. The first update I would like to give you is from Season 1, Episode 14, titled The Delphi Murders. This is the case of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, commonly known as Abby and Libby. These two young girls went hiking near the Monon High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana, and they were never seen alive again. Libby posted a video on her Snapchat that showed a man approaching the young girls, and police released an audio clip of this man saying the words, "Down the hill." The girls' bodies were located the following day. However, in the 6 years since this crime took place, no one has been arrested. That is, until October 26, 2022. A suspect was taken into custody, a man by the name of James Chadwell, who was arrested in April of 2021 after being accused of kidnapping and beating a different young girl. On November 29th, a judge issued an order to unseal the probable cause affidavit that led to the suspect's arrest. According to the redacted document, video footage recovered from Liberty German's phone showed one of the victims mentioning "gun" as the man wearing a dark jacket and jeans approached them and ordered them to go down the hill. Investigators believe the suspect is the man seen in the video. Investigators also found a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from one of the victims' bodies and between the two victims. They later determined that the round came from the gun owned by the suspect. A witness said she saw the man walking away from the bridge wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. Another witness and a tip mentioned that a car was parked oddly and appeared to be parked in a way as if to hide its license plate. Investigators said the description of the vehicle matched a vehicle that the suspect owned in 2017. According to the probable cause affidavit, the suspect was interviewed by the police in 2017 and said he was on the trail that afternoon for around 2 hours. The document also said that in a subsequent interview in October 2022, the suspect told authorities he had worn jeans and a blue or black jacket that day, and he had gone to the bridge to watch fish. On December 2nd, the judge issued a gag order until January 2023. The suspect's defense attorneys argued in a motion to move the trial out of Carroll County, based on concerns about juror bias due to what the attorneys described as the extensive media attention and the highly publicized nature of the case in the local area. The next case, which has a slight update, is that of the Chowchilla school bus kidnappings. We covered this case in Season 1 in Episode 15. In this case, 3 men, James Schoenfeld, Richard Schoenfeld, and Fred Woods, all perpetrated a kidnapping in which they stopped a school bus on a rural road and then took the school bus full of children and the bus driver hostage. The men's efforts were wasted, however, when the bus driver and the children escaped on their own and were returned to their families. The 2 Schoenfeld brothers were released on parole in 2012 and 2015. But at the time of our episode, Fred Woods still remained in prison. In March of 2022, a panel of 2 commissioners recommended Woods for parole. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, asked the parole board to reconsider their decision, but they stuck with their decision anyway, and Fred was paroled and released from prison on August 17th, 2022. Another case we covered in Season 1 as Episode 19 was the case of Lori Vallow Daybell. Many media outlets now call Lori Daybell the Doomsday Mom because she had some outlandish end-of-days sentiments going on in her life as she murdered her children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. But it wasn't just Tylee and JJ who went missing and were found murdered in this case. The dead bodies around Lori Vallow Daybell just kept mounting. On May 25th, 2021, Lori Vallow Daybell and her husband, Chad Daybell, were charged with the murders of Tamara Daybell, Chad's now deceased wife, and the murders of Tylee and JJ. Lori was deemed incompetent to stand trial just 2 days later, which caused a stay in her case in Idaho. On June 29, 2021, Lori Vallow was indicted in Arizona on counts of conspiracy to murder her husband, Charles Vallow. And in May of 2022, the prosecution announced that they will be seeking the death penalty for Lori Vallow, asserting that she qualifies for capital punishment because the killings were exceptionally depraved and financially motivated. And after a ton of false starts and stops for this trial, a new trial date for both of these monsters is set to begin on April 3rd, 2023, and that is just next month. Another interesting update has surfaced from a very famous case we covered in Season 1 as Episode 42, The Murder of Emmett Till. Everyone in the United States of America knows the story of Emmett Till, and it is a case ingrained in the heart of the civil rights movement. For a case that took place in 1955, you may think that no stone has been left unturned and that everything about this case must have come to light over the years. Well, that is until June of 2022, when an unserved arrest warrant for Carolyn Bryant was discovered in the basement of a courthouse in LaFleur County. Carolyn Bryant had been the white woman who accused Emmett Till of whistling at her and flirting with her in her grocery store. This story led to the young man's death at the hands of local racist white men. The newly discovered warrant had been issued on August 29, 1955. After this discovery, the family of Emmett Till began calling for the warrant to be enforced and for Bryant to be arrested. The district attorney declined to serve the warrant, stating that there was no new evidence to reopen the case. In December of 2022, Bowling Green, Kentucky, canceled their annual Christmas parade due to threats of violence against groups who planned to protest outside of Carolyn Bryant Donham's home. In actuality, this protest took place very peacefully. Now we can move on from Season 1 of The Secret Sits to Season 2, and our first update comes from Season 2, Episode 1, Who is Anna Sorokin? Now that Julia Garner has won all of America's hearts with her over-the-top portrayal of Anna Delphi on the Netflix show Inventing Anna, and millions of people either impersonate Anna's crazy accent or her strange catchphrases, you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who has not heard of this story. In the end, Anna Delvey went to jail for her money schemes. But just some silly, boring metal bars could not keep Anna down. She served her time and was released. 6 weeks after her release, on March 25, 2021, Anna was arrested by ICE agents for overstaying her visa. She was being held in a jail in New Jersey, awaiting deportation to Germany. While being held in the jail, in January of 2022, Anna tested positive for COVID-19, and she was placed in quarantine. On October 25, 2022, Anna was given a $10,000 bond, and she was released from prison. Anna was required to remain in 24-hour home confinement with an electronic monitoring device. The next case, which has a slight update, is from our most listened to episodes of all time. In Season 2, we made a 3-part series covering the Turpin family, a family of 13 children who were woefully neglected and abused by their parents. After one of the children escaped and contacted authorities, the children were saved. Or were they? David and Louise Turpin were both sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years, and the children were sent to foster homes. We would hope that this would have been the end of a horrible life for these children. However, 3 years after being saved from their parents, the children came forward with claims that their foster parents had sexually abused multiples of the siblings. In the lawsuit, the children said that their foster parents would threaten to send them back to their biological parents, who were in prison. This case is still going through litigation, but we truly hope that the nightmares stop at some point for these 13 children. One of my favorite series to write in Season 2 was that of the Notek sisters, whose mother, Michelle, or Shelley Notek, tortured and mentally manipulated her family through the years. In 2004, Shelley was convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter for her part in the torture and deaths of Kathy Loreno, Ronald Woodworth, and Shane Watson. Shelley received a sentence of 22 years in prison. Shelley's husband, Dave Notek, who received 15 years in prison for his part in the crimes, had already been paroled at the time of our story. After serving around 18 years of her sentence, Shelley Notek was released from prison on November 8th, 2022. And here we are, at the end of our second season of The Secret Sits. We could not be prouder of the show we have produced for all of you. And just you wait, because Season 3 of The Secret Sits will be dropping into your feed this summer. In the meantime, follow us on our social media and keep up with everything exciting coming up on The Secret Sits. We dance round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. The Secret Sits podcast is researched and written by me, John Dodson. Audio engineering by Gabriel Dodson. Original logo artwork provided by Tony Lay.